Welcome to the Betty Glick Assembly Chambers. I'll call the November 7, 2023 regular meeting of the Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly to order. This meeting is also being conducted through the Zoom meeting platform and can also be heard on KDLL FM 91.9, KBBI AM 890, and FM 88.1. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now receive an invocation offered by Annette O'Connell. You may either remain standing or be seated. No one is required to participate.
For letting me do this. Thank you for the privilege. Appreciate it. Okay. Dear Lord God Almighty, thank you that we have a direct path to you. And this is only because of the sacrifice of your Son, Jesus, who was fully man and fully God. God, you teach the people to be loyal to their governing authorities. And you also teach that the governing authorities are to be subject to you. Jesus, one of your titles is Wonderful Counselor. The word wonderful in Hebrew means beyond all human abilities or understanding. And our leaders have access to this counsel that is all-knowing and all-powerful. Wow. Thank you, Father. Father God, keep our leaders and all of us from the warning and judges. And everyone did what was right in his own eyes. As you tell us, there is a way that seems right to man, but the way thereof is death. God, I pray that our governing authorities seek and keep your counsel as they have the fearful responsibility and accountability of ruling. Keep them and the people they govern from pride and self-centeredness. May the governing authorities stand solidly on you, our Creator, that they may hear, well done, when they stand before you. And we pray this in Christ's holy name. Amen.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
President Johnson,
Here.
Vice President Cox,
Here.
Ms. Cooper,
Here.
Ms. Eklund,
Here.
Mr. Elam,
Here.
Mr. Hibbert,
Here.
Mr. Ribbons,
Here.
Mr. Tunseth,
Here.
Mr. Tupper.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chairman Ribbons, please give us the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, President Johnson. The observant among you will notice that I am not Brent Hibbert. We convened our meeting this afternoon at 1400, and we started off by a presentation by Cliff Cochran with the Small Business Development Center. He spent about 20 minutes talking about what they do there. It was an interesting talk. The one thing I would point out for any of you business people who are looking for the sort of services, you can go to aksbc.org and access their information. It's well worth it. Public hearings on ordinances. Ordinance 2023-19-24. This is for appropriating $80,516 to the Disaster Response Fund for expenditures responding to the recent local disaster emergency declaration. This was brought to us by the mayor, and essentially what this one does is replenishes the budgeted $100,000 for disaster response. Under new business, a resolution 2023-070. This is accepting $243,000 from the State of Alaska Department of Military and Veteran Affairs, Division of Homeland Security, and Emergency Management for emergency management operations. This was brought to us by the mayor, and this makes money available for borough and emergency management activities. Resolution 2023-071. This is approving revisions to the solid waste section of the borough's schedule of rates, charges, and fees, brought to us by the mayor. There were a few changes in there. In part, it reconciles tonnage versus volume rates and clarifies some of out of borough solid waste fees. Resolution 2023-072. redistributing fiscal years 2023 and 2022 Community Assistance Program funds to eligible fiduciaries within the unincorporated communities of Clam Gulch, Nanwalek, and Razdolna. This was brought to us by the mayor, and this makes some money that was not accessed in previous years back to those communities in some different avenues. Ordinances for introduction, ordinance 2023-19-25, accepting and appropriating funding from the state of Alaska in the amount of $394,725,000 and approving projects to be completed for community purposes under the 2023 Community Assistance Program brought to us by the mayor. And the hearing on that will be 12/12/23, which is my birthday. Ordinance 2023-19-26, redirecting $500,000 from the U.S. Treasury state and local fiscal recovery funds from the bridge infrastructure project to cybersecurity and broadband project, and expanding the scope of road service area locally funded bridge project brought to us by the mayor. The hearing will be on 12/12/23. In part, this reallocates some money for cybersecurity and broadband projects to get it completed within time constraints, and it also increases the road service area opportunities to do some evaluation and prioritization of bridge projects which are needed. Ordinance 2023-19-27, accepting and appropriating $36,000 from the State of Alaska Department of Military and Veteran Affairs, Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management to upgrade a security gate motor brought to us by the mayor, and this is to replace a security gate motor. Ordinance 2023-19-28, appropriating commercial passenger vessel tax proceeds received from the state of Alaska in the amount of $177,050 and allocating $303,825 to the city of Seward and $352.50 to the city of Homer, brought to us by the mayor. This is just providing the proceeds from those taxes to the communities where the cruise industry was based on the number of passengers who came there. And that's the extent of my report. We adjourned at 15:01. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Ribbons. The next committee report is Lands, and the report will be brought to us by Chairwoman Eklund.
Thank you, President Johnson. The Lands Committee met at 3:30 today. We had one new business item, an ordinance for introduction. The ordinance 2023-25, approving Anchors Away North Subdivision, Single Family Residential, R1, Local Option Zoning District, and amending Kenai Peninsula Borough 21.46.040, brought to us by the mayor. The hearing will be on December 12th. This item is a property owned by the Alaska Department of Natural Resources, and they submitted an application for a single family R1 LOZD of 39.4 acres. It is located in Happy Valley along the Sterling Highway. The Planning Commission approved the proposed LOZD, but the plat will be submitted with the finalized LOZD after our meetings. Property owners within 300 feet of this parcel were notified of a community meeting that was held on October 18th, and there were no attendees, but public comment was received. The LOZD meets code and is consistent with our comp plan. The Kenai Peninsula Borough Code requires we approve, disapprove, or modify the proposed LOZD. If adopted, code will be amended to include Anchors Away North Subdivision. That's the end of our Lands Committee report.
Thank you, Chairwoman Eklund. Policies and Procedures Committee, the report will be brought to us by Chairman Tupper.
So Policies and Procedures met at 3:45 today, and we discussed several things. One of those was Resolution 2023-073, authorizing one full-time IT system manager administrative service position, brought to us by the mayor. And this is a manager position in the IT department that would free up the director to take part in a little bit more of directorial level stuff. As it stands right now, he's doing some more employee supervision. And then Next, we had Resolution 2023-074, authorizing the reinstatement of one full-time GIS analyst classified service position brought to us by the mayor. And similar to the first one, this is a position that we had in the past that is coming back to free up some of the director's time to work with the mayor. And next, we have Resolution 2023-075, amending the Assembly invocation policy to provide that invocations will be given by chaplains. This was brought to us by the mayor and Vice President Cox and Assemblyperson Cooper. And this was brought forward in an effort to try to make the invocations more predictable and to ensure that they're being delivered in a way that is supportive of the purpose of the invocation without bringing in external motivations in how those are delivered. And so just trying to make it so that those stay as non-denominational and as kind of appropriate to the setting as possible. Next is Resolution 2023-079, authorizing a memorandum of agreement between the Kenai Peninsula Borough and the cities of Ketchimat, Kenai, Homer, Soldotna, Seward, and Soldotna for the joint exercise of tourism promotion. This is brought to us by the mayor, and it's a laydown. And essentially, it allows us as a borough to then include those cities in the tourism promotion advertising that we're doing. The way that it currently stands, it's a little awkward to invite people to the borough without inviting them to the cities of the borough. So this will just kind of bridge that gap, and this is a necessary thing to allow us to have that agreement. So next up, under other, we've got KPB-5603, and this was the approval of the 2024 Assembly meeting schedule brought to us by President Johnson at the request of the borough clerk. And not a whole lot to say here other than there's a few things. We had talked about meeting the second meeting in September in Homer, but that's going to be in August just because of the timing of a few other things that the clerks have to do. And yeah, that is posted. So if anybody has any questions about it, you can find on that on the website. And KPB, next up is KPB 5604, confirming appointments to service area boards. And we had for Ketchimat Emergency, Seat A, Millie Martin, and Soldovia Recreation, Seat B, Jessica Loudermilk, and Seat E, Jennifer Cameron, and Seward Bear Creek Flood, Seat D, Rodney Ramick. And next up is KPB 5605, confirming an appointment to the Hope Sunrise Advisory Planning Commission. And this was brought to us by the mayor, and this is appointing Barbara Bureau to CE for that Planning Commission. And that was all from Policies and Procedures.
Thank you, Chairman Tupper. And the final committee report is legislative, and it will be brought to us by Chairman Elam.
Thank you. Good evening. The Legislative Committee met at 4:30 tonight. We had 3 items on our agenda, starting with Resolution 2023-076, establishing the Kenai Peninsula Borough's state capital project priorities for the year 2024, brought to us by the mayor. In short, we've been working for the last couple of months to try to get our schedule more aligned with our legislative and capital project priorities for the state so that we can make the governor's budget in a more efficient manner. And so we'll have greater odds of getting all of our, or at least some of our requests met. And so we did that. So that'll be on tonight's agenda. And well, it's on the consent agenda. And then we have Resolution 2023-077, supporting the transportation priorities to be considered for grant funding to be submitted to the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities. Again, brought to us by the mayor. This is grant funding for low income and like handicap, disabled facility or transportation is what it's for. And so it's grant funding for that. Then we also had Resolution 2023-078, supporting House Bill 68 and Senate Bill 66, relating to human and sex trafficking, brought to us by the mayor and Ms. Eklund. And sex trafficking has been an issue that's been on everybody's agenda here recently. And it's an issue that we have here in the state of Alaska. And, you know, the goal here is to to support some legislation around making some of those laws a bit better for our communities. And all three of these items will be on the consent agenda, so anybody wanting to speak to those would need to speak during the consent agenda time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Elam. Vice President Cox, may I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda?
Yes, I move to approve the agenda and consent agenda.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to the agenda and consent agenda? Mr. Tupper.
I would like to add resolution 2023-079 to the agenda and to the consent agenda, and I'd ask for unanimous.
Unanimous is requested. Is there any objection? Hearing and seeing no objection, are there any more? Mr. Ribbons.
I would move to add ordinance 2023-19-24 to the consent agenda, and I ask for unanimous.
Unanimous is requested. Is there any objection? Hearing and seeing no objection, it is added. Vice President Cox.
Yes, I would like to add KPB 5616, a resolution commending the service of Tim Dillon to the communities of the Kenai Peninsula Borough, brought to you by myself and Assemblymember Hibbert, to the agenda and consent agenda. And I would ask for unanimous.
Unanimous is requested. Is there any objection? Hearing and seeing none, that is added as well. Any more? Okay, then. We are now going to in a moment, the clerk will read the titles of the items on the consent agenda. After she reads them, you will have an opportunity. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a note here that Mr. Hibbert was going to declare a possible conflict on Resolution 077.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, for reminding me. Yes, I do have a conflict of interest on Resolution 2023-077. I am in transportation, public transportation, and I do currently contract to the Independent Living Center that is going to be receiving these funds.
Thank you, Mr. Hibbert, and thank you, Madam Clerk, for reminding us. I'm going to rule that Mr. Hibbert does have a conflict. Then I'm back to. In a moment, the clerk will read the titles of the items on the consent agenda. After she reads them, you'll have an opportunity to testify about them. All items that stay on the consent agenda will be approved or set for public hearing, whichever is the case when the Assembly approves the agenda and consent agenda. Madam Clerk, please read the consent agenda.
October 24, 2023 regular Assembly meeting minutes. A resolution commending the service of Tim Dillon to the communities of the Kenai Peninsula Borough, introduced by Mr. Cox and Mr. Hibbert. Ordinance 2023-1924, appropriating $80,516 to the Disaster Response Fund for expenditures responding to the recent local disaster emergency declaration, sponsored by the Mayor. Resolution 2023-070, accepting $243,000 from the State of Alaska Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management for emergency management operations, introduced by the Mayor. Resolution 2023-071, approving revisions to the solid waste section of the Borough's schedule of rates, charges, and fees, sponsored by the Mayor. Resolution 2023-072, redistributing fiscal years 2022 and 2023 Community Assistant Program funds to eligible fiduciaries within the unincorporated communities of Clam Gulch, Nanwalek, and Soldotna, introduced by the Mayor. Resolution 2023-073, authorizing one full-time IT System Manager Administrative Service position, sponsored by the Mayor. Resolution 2023-074, authorizing the reinstatement of one full-time GIS Analyst Classified Service position, sponsored by the Mayor. Resolution 2023-075, amending the Assembly invocation policy to provide that invocations will be given by chaplains, sponsored by the Mayor, Mr. Cox, Ms. Cooper, and Mr. Elam. Resolution 2023-076, establishing the Kenai Peninsula Borough State Capital Project priorities for the year 2024, sponsored by the Mayor. Resolution 2023-077, supporting the transportation priorities to be considered for grant funding to be submitted to the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities, introduced by the Mayor. Resolution 2023-078, supporting House Bill 68 and Senate Bill 66, relating to human and sex trafficking, sponsored by the Mayor, Ms. Eklund, Mr. Cox, Mr. Tupper, Mr. Elam, and Mr. Hibbert. Resolution 2023-079, authorizing a memorandum of agreement between the Kenai Peninsula Borough and the cities of Kachumak, Kenai, Homer, Soldotna, Seward, and Soldotna for the joint exercise of tourism promotion, sponsored by the Mayor and Mr. Cox. Ordinance 2023-1925, accepting and appropriating funding from the State of Alaska in the amount of $394,725 and approving projects to be completed for community purposes under the 2023-2024 Community Assistance Program, sponsored by the Mayor, hearing on December 12th. Ordinance 2023-1926, redirecting $500,000 in U.S. Treasury state and local fiscal recovery funds from the Bridge Infrastructure Project to the Cybersecurity and Broadband Project, and expanding the scope of the road service area locally funded bridge project, sponsored by the Mayor, hearing on December 12th. Ordinance 2023-1927, accepting and appropriating $36,000 from the State of Alaska Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management to upgrade a security gate motor, sponsored by the Mayor, hearing on December 12th. Ordinance 2023-1928, appropriating commercial passenger vessel tax proceeds received from the State of Alaska in the amount of $304,177.50 and allocating $303,825 to the City of Seward and $352.50 to the City of Homer, sponsored by the Mayor, hearing on December 12th. Ordinance 2023-25, approving Anchors Away North Subdivision Single Family Residential Local Option Zoning District and amending KPB 2146040, sponsored by the Mayor, hearing on December 12th. KPB 5603, approval of the 2024 Assembly meeting schedule, sponsored by President Johnson at the request of the Borough Clerk. KPB 5604, confirming appointments to service area boards. Kachumak Emergency, Millie Martin, Seat A. Soldotna Recreational, Jessica Loudermilk, Seat B. Jennifer Cameron, Seat E. Seward Bear Creek Flood, Rodney Romich, Seat D. All terms to expire October 2026. KPB 5605, confirming an appointment to the Hope Sunrise Advisory Planning Commission, sponsored by the Mayor. Barbara Bureau, Seat E, term to expire September 30th, 2026. That is the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now we will open up for public testimony on items that were on the consent agenda. Pardon me? Which is everything. But if there's an item on the consent agenda that you would like to speak to, this is your time to do it. Madam Clerk, is there anybody signed up? Please tell me their name.
Ray Southwell, regarding Resolution 078.
Oh, thank you, whoever did that magic. Dear Assembly members, sex trafficking. We are Ray and Faith Southwell. We reside in Niskiski. We support Resolution 2023-078. We thank Assembly Member Eklund and Mayor Michecki for introducing this resolution supporting Governor Dunleavy's anti-trafficking bill, HB 68 and SB 66. Sex trafficking does occur on the Kenai Peninsula, we have heard from some and their family members. Alaska's legislature changed our prostitution laws in 2012, taking out the words promoting prostitution and inserting sex trafficking. The law is a dismal failure. The State House Judiciary Committee has modified HB 68. The governor's version and the House Judiciary Committee's version have several issues we must address as a community. One such example is educating the children through the school system regarding their risk of being sex trafficked. A national organization called Polaris Project analyzed data from the 2021 data from the National Human Trafficking Hotline. The Polaris Project is named after the North Star, quote, which people held in slavery in the United States used as a guide to navigate their way to freedom. According to the Polaris Project, the internet is a large part of recruitment location for trafficking, quote, like dating sites, Facebook, Instagram, chat rooms, and other mobile apps. Quote, end quote, out of 700 reported victims in 2021, 458 were recruited through the internet locations. Traffickers use the internet apps as a recruitment location for 65% of their victims. Students need to understand the risk. It is our prayer to have unanimous support for this resolution before you. Traffickers need to be put on notice. We on the Kenai Peninsula are serious about eradicating sex trafficking on the Kenai Peninsula. I would also like to add that we encourage our previous state senator and current mayor, Peter Machicki, to contact his earlier peers in the state Senate to support SB 66. It appears it was stalled by the Senate Judiciary Committee last spring. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, anyone else signed up?
Faith Southwell, did you want to speak as well?
Please vote for the resolution.
Thank you, Faith. Anyone else, Madam Clerk? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to talk to something? Come on up.
Hello, Adam Bertoldo, Nikiski. I'd like to speak against passing 2023-075 as a consent agenda item. I can see some of the benefits to the change, but I'm not sure that this is something that I would support. Chaplains have had a chance to sign up with the rest of the people, and I think I've only seen one, but I'm not even sure if I have seen one chaplain come and give the invocation, but I'll say I've seen one. I don't like all the prayers that are given, but I do like that the people have the opportunity to come before the assembly and give the prayer before the meeting. This is the people's assembly, so I would lean towards letting them continue to have that right to do that. If chaplains want to start signing up, they can do that along with everyone else. At this point, I don't see enough of a reason to change it. Although I said, I don't like all the prayers that are given. Of course, there's some I strongly disagree with. But I would lean towards the liberty on that. And at a minimum, I would ask that this be taken off of the consent agenda. And I'd like to see a little bit of discussion about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Bertoldo? Thank you, Adam. Anyone else like to speak to something on the consent agenda? Hi, Tim. Welcome.
Thank you, President Johnson, members of the Assembly, Mayor Machicki. I'm here to just give comment on Resolution 2023-077. I was part of that meeting. I have been part of the Kenai Peninsula's coordinated transportation for a long, long time. We did hold the meeting on October 19th and had a good turnout. And I also want to thank Brenda Alberg for her job in all the years that the borough, since I think it's been about 7 years now, the borough's been doing this, maybe because they become the lead. You're the lead that puts this meeting together. Used to be with carts. Now the borough's doing it. And so we had a good meeting. You're also going to hear about a resolution we're going to bring to your December 12th meeting that we also asked that some of the same 5310 funds, they're a competitive grant funding from the state. The 5311 aren't. Those are the funds that carts get, and they're not competitive in the market, and that's the resolution we're going to ask the Assembly to consider on the 12th. But I just want you to know on this one also, I think it was last year was the first year, but we used to group all the funding together and not make a priority for Seward, Homer, or the Central Peninsula. I think last year was the first year DOT says you have to pick one, and I think we went Central Peninsula, Seward, and Homer. So this year we went Homer, Seward, and the Central Peninsula because we don't want to do it. I think all the funds are going to get funded, but I just wanted you to know our committee did. We don't want to play between each other. We want our whole borough to support that, and that's what we've done through this committee in meeting for these grant funds. And everybody that was eligible to participate through the state's rules were considered, and technically they're the only independent living, which does a very good job on the peninsula. We're the only ones that did qualify this year for those competitive funds. And so we hope the state does fund them at the levels they did. And some of you, if you just want to know, it's probably in the resolution, but there's matching funds requirement, 43,000 from the Central Peninsula, 30,000 from Homer, and 6,000 from Seward. That's required to match these grant funds, and they're prepared to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Are there any questions for Mr. Navarre? I have one, Tim. Long as you mentioned those matching funds, is that done by population, or there's a different amount of matching funds for the different communities? Why is that different?
I'd probably have to go to Brenda. I believe it's done on dollars, but I don't know that formula what exact the match requirement, but it might be by because Seward I know gets a little better percentage, but I'm not sure. But anyway, we're happy. Those can be raised in a number of different ways to qualify for. In other words, they charge some of those vouchers. Homer has a two-tiered one for outside the city limits and one so that those people can still get in. So let's say on a $10 ride, they might have to pay $4 for that voucher and $6, and they get to use that $4 to be used for the match. In the Kenai area, who has to excuse himself in the vote, but so they're all a little different, but that's how it works, and that's how some of the matching funds come in.
Thank you for your work on this, Tim. It's many, many community service things you do, and I appreciate it. Anyone else care to speak on something that was on the consent agenda? Come on up.
Hello, Lindsay Bertoldo from Nikiski. I wanted to echo Ray's support for the resolution on sex trafficking. Also wanted to echo Adam's remarks on the chaplain idea. If it wasn't for the experience I had in the Air Force when I was getting out, I had just served in Iraq, and the chaplains, Adam has an uncle, or had an uncle, that was a chaplain in the Air Force, and there was an issue where they were told that they were not allowed to pray in Jesus' name. And so you can imagine that caused a lot of issues, and a lot of people wanted to get out of the Air Force at that point in time, especially chaplains. And it didn't just happen in the Air Force. From what I understand, it went on into other areas of government, the Border Patrol and whatnot. And so it's something that I would like you to really think about how that could be an issue eventually at some point as far as the First Amendment rights. And also, I would wonder, would this be a hired person, one person who always gave the invocation? Would they then become an employee of the borough? And would that be an extra expense for benefits and whatnot? Just some things to think about. But I do appreciate the blessing, I think it is, for each one of us to have the opportunity to give the invocation. And I would love to see more chaplains come and give the invocations, but I would not want anybody being told how they should pray. And I think that would be a possibility at some point that they would be. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mrs. Barteldo? Yeah, Mr. Hibbert.
Yes. Lindsay, did I misunderstand it? Maybe you said that the chaplains couldn't pray to Jesus.
They could not publicly pray in Jesus' name. Okay. They were.
What about maybe something like Allah or Buddha? Were they allowed to do that?
I never heard one of them do that, but there was not specifically, as far as I know, any instruction given to them that they couldn't pray in those names, which is interesting, I think.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak to something on the consent agenda? Come on up.
Hello. My name is Nick Connor from Soldotna, Alaska. I don't know the number of the consent agenda, but as far as the security gate motor, I used to work on LiftMaster motors. They are very finicky. If this is the gate that they're talking about, it is in the back of the emergency management building. I'm not sure how long it's been not working, but as far as I know, it's been not working for many, many, many years because I've done work there in the past. There is a key tag there now where you can put it in a code and the gate will open and close, but if you go by there during the day, it's open. There is a secured door in the back, so the people who access the building, there is a secured door. If the people are afraid, they can just park out front because there's lighting and there's security cameras there. If the gate motor quits braking, if it quits, then people won't be able to access the back of the building. And I think it could turn into a large expense because they're very finicky, especially with the snow removal. So I know that the mayor put it on the agenda. Also, and if it's kind of weird that the emergency management building is actually asking for money right now because as of Friday, the emergency management building is no longer open to the public. So the public is not even allowed on the property as far as I'm aware. So I think there's no reason to have a secured gate if the public aren't even allowed to be there without law enforcement being called because the entire facility is secure. So that's all I wanted to say.
Mr. Connors, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I don't see any. Thank you for your information. Anyone else? Madam Clerk.
I have Michelle Vasquez on Zoom.
Michelle, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Michelle Vasquez. I live in Soldotna, and I am calling in regards to 2023-075. First of all, I agree with the gentleman who spoke earlier. I believe this should be removed from the consent agenda and discussed and not just passed with one vote. I believe we've been down this road before with the whole invocation thing. I think there was a lawsuit and the Alaska Superior Court decided that basically anyone could give an invocation. They did not have to be of a certain religion or a chaplain or a minister or a priest or whatever. So I think that this needs to be removed from the consent agenda and discussed more thoroughly. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Are there any questions for Ms. Vasquez? Don't see any. Anybody else want to speak to something on the consent agenda? Come on forward.
My name is Peyton Bertoldo, and I wanted to speak to 075 regarding the invocation. We have been able to do the invocations because of that rule, and I don't see. We've had discussions about the problems that we've seen with invocations, and we've had Borough Assembly members do invocations that we didn't necessarily agree with as well. So, it should just be up to, we should just have the right to do this, to do our invocations. And just because we have an agenda, I don't think an agenda or a denomination should be discriminated against. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Peyton, appreciate your testimony. Any questions for Mr. Berteldo? Don't see any. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
I have Dwayne Bannock on Zoom.
Mr. Bannock, go ahead. Mr. Bannock, are you muted?
Here I am. Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize for that. Thank you, Assembly members, for allowing me to join you via Zoom tonight from my fancy-dancy office. I'm here tonight to speak in support of the aforementioned Resolution 2375. I find it to be very reasonable and incredibly sane. This discussion item has proved to be insane over several different years, lawsuits, and as dangerously close as I came to agreeing with removing invocations from the agenda, not because I was simply worn down from the fight, but rather the disrespect that has been shown in that time period by certain members of our own community. I am pleased. I say thank you to Assembly members Tyson Cox and Ms. Kelly. I apologize, and to the mayor for your sponsorship of this, and urge it to pass tonight as written. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bannock. Are there any questions
Cooper,
for Dwayne?
thank you.
Hearing and seeing none, is there anyone else that would like to speak to something on the consent agenda?
Hello, my name is Chair Wackler. I too am going to speak on 075. I wasn't going to lend my voice to this, but a couple of members on the council have said that overwhelmingly they've heard that there are a number of constituents who think that there's no amount of money that's too much to waste on this endeavor. And that's disheartening to hear. So I thought a competing voice that says there is too much money to waste on this endeavor. So do we have an extra $120,000 to $200,000 to spend on this again? If you cannot in good conscience tell me and the 60,000 other borough residents that your intent with this resolution to change the invocation policy is not primarily to exclude certain religions from participating in this activity, then go for it. But if you know that there are certain members of this body who will use this as a limiting strategy, know that it will end up costing the borough taxpayers money that could be put to much better use. It seems like it was so long ago that we went down this path, but we remember it was only 7 years ago. Here was an attempt by this body to limit religious freedom. In the 2018 ruling against KPB by the Alaska Superior Court, it was stated the borough invocation policy, quote, stemmed from intolerance because it was designed to, quote, exclude minority faiths or beliefs. These policy changes to designate a rotating chaplain appointed by the borough president may seem to be in accordance with previously upheld federal and circuit court rulings. However, in each of the quoted rulings, the intent to exclude certain participants was not apparent. Almost exactly a year ago, a sitting member of this body who sponsored this resolution publicly called for constituents to, quote, stand in strong prayer during the entirety of an invocation given by a member of a differing religion from his own. He went on to comment, I just don't agree with her beliefs. That's my right, just as it is yours. Our freedom of speech allows this member to say these things and anything else he wishes for or against another religion. I will stand by his right to freely express these views. It's only when making decisions and policy as a member of our government that these views become problematic. I think these views preclude people from giving a statement that this proposal is not in fact an attempt to use power to limit the free expression of all religions and is therefore in clear violation of the extremely important and strongly held ideals of these United States of America, of allowing a governing body to not hold one religion above another. In short, this is stupid, it's unnecessary, it will inevitably embroil us in another lawsuit, and it's a clear attempt to violate religious freedom, free expression, and the Establishment Clause, despite the assertion that it follows the law. Intent is everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Don't see any. Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to an item on the consent agenda? Hearing and seeing none, I will close this portion of the public hearing. I've got a question for Madam Clerk. So, we've had several requests to pull this from the consent agenda. I'm curious, I've never seen something pulled from the consent agenda at this point, but I take it we still can pull it from the consent agenda.
Mr. President, that is correct. The agenda and consent agenda has not been voted on yet.
So I thought, okay, so here's my intention is to pull that particular resolution 23077 from the consent agenda, and so that's what I'll do. And put it in this regular spot on the agenda. Yep. Other than that, now,
if I may, Mr. President, the correct number is Resolution 2023-075.
Thank you for that important correction. So we are back to request unanimous approval to approve the agenda and consent agenda as amended. Vice President Cox.
Yes, thank you. I will ask for unanimous approval to approve the agenda and consent agenda as amended.
Any objections? Hearing and seeing none, we have an agenda. And the next thing is commending resolutions and proclamations. KPB 5595, Mayor's Proclamation declaring November 25, 2023 as Small Business Saturday. Mayor Michiki, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. This was brought to me by the U.S. Small Business Administration. Prior to reading it, I want to remind folks when we were doing research on what an internal economy looks like, a community as small as 1,300 can be fully self-sustainable when people shop at home. And the realization of the mountains of brown boxes from somewhere else are something to think about. Before I read this, just think about, for every nonprofit event, how our local moms and pops are contributing to everything that we do. Shop at home when you can. Kenai Peninsula Borough, Alaska Proclamation, whereas the government of the Kenai Peninsula Borough, Alaska celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community, and whereas according to the U.S. Small Business Administration, there are 33.2 million small businesses in the United States. Small businesses represent 99.7% of firms with paid employees. Small businesses are responsible for 62.7% of new net jobs created since 1995, and small businesses employ 46.4% of the employees in the private sector in the United States. And whereas 68 cents of every dollar spent at a small business in the United States stays in the local community, and every dollar spent at small businesses creates an additional 48 cents in local business activity as a result of employees and local businesses purchasing local goods and services. And whereas 72% of consumers report that Small Business Saturday 2022 made them want to shop and dine at small, independently owned retailers and restaurants all year long, and whereas the Kenai Peninsula Borough of Alaska supports our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our communities. And whereas advocacy groups, as well as public and private organizations across the country, have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Now, therefore, I, Peter A. Machicki, Mayor of the Kenai Peninsula Borough, Alaska, do hereby proclaim November 25th, 2023 as Small Business Saturday, and urge the residents of our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and to shop small throughout the year. Peter A. Machicki, Kenai Peninsula Borough Mayor. There's typically someone to receive these. I'm just going to display it in the office and probably post it online as a reminder as we get into the holidays that shopping at home keeps your dollars right here. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Machicki, and I certainly appreciate your sponsoring that proclamation. Next is KPB 5616, a resolution commending the service of Tim Dillon to the communities of the Kenai Peninsula Borough. Is brought to us by Vice President Cox and Mr. Hibbert. Vice President Cox.
Thank you. And so I'll read through the resolution, and then we'll come down and we will present it to Mr. Dillon. This is a resolution commending the service of Tim Dillon to the communities of the Kenai Peninsula Borough. Whereas Tim Dillon began his tenure with the Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District as a board member over 15 years ago while serving as city manager for the city of Soldotna. And whereas on August 1st, 2016, Tim became the executive director of the Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District. And whereas Tim has continually advocated for the communities, businesses, and residents of the Kenai Peninsula by bringing attention and resources to all areas of our 15.8 million acre borough. And whereas Tim has worked tirelessly to identify Kenai Peninsula needs by supporting infrastructure improvements, workforce development, and more access to capital for small businesses of the borough. And whereas Tim has provided countless free consultations to the Kenai Peninsula business owners and entrepreneurs. And whereas with his dynamic leadership skills and vast experience in communication, Tim has helped to improve efficiencies and relationships across municipalities, tribes, and industries of the Kenai Peninsula. And whereas projects in which Tim's leadership has been instrumental are Alaska Fish Nutrition, the Peninsula Tourism Marketing Council, the Homer Boat Haul Out, regional airport authorities, the Nikiski Road Extension, spruce bark beetle mitigation planning, borough land use projects, the 2020 census, broadband infrastructure, and Alaska Mariculture Cluster. And whereas Tim will be retiring from the position of executive director of the Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District on December 31st, 2023, now therefore be it resolved by the Assembly of the Kenai Peninsula Borough that the Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly extends great appreciation for the leadership Tim Dillon has exhibited as director of the Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District and for his many years of dedication and commitment to our borough. And we will be giving you a copy of this, and this will be adopted, or actually has been adopted today. So thank you, Tim.
Thank you. It gave me great pleasure seeing Tim receive that award. He's been a super cheerleader for small business and economic development. Next, we will have presentations with prior notice, and guess what? Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District Quarterly Report will be brought to us by Tim Dillon, Executive Director.
Good evening. Thank you very much, first of all, for that presentation. Tim Dillon, Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District. This is my last official report for the Assembly, so I'm going to do the first half, and then my replacement will be doing the second half. So I'm glad that Cassidy Cameron has agreed to be the new Executive Director as of January 1. And yeah, she's a hell of a lot smarter and probably a lot better than I am at this. So I see us going no place but continuing to go up. So if we could start our presentation real quick. Next slide. One of the things that I started when I first came on board was looking at the entire Kenai Peninsula Borough. And I think that's something that has really struck a chord with me. And I know that Cassidy, coming from over in Soldotna, really understands that whether you're Nanwalek or Port Graham or Seward or Tyonek or Hope, it's a rather large area, and we need to continue to remember that. Next page. We have this overview of who we are and what we do, but the bottom line is quality of living. Everything that we do revolves around quality of living to make sure that when people live here on the Kenai Peninsula, that they're happy, they're healthy, and they're safe. Next slide. As most of you all know, we do have a 30-acre facility at the edge of Kenai. We do have some office space for lease. Some of you probably know that the driving school that we helped start here 5 years ago has actually moved out now. That's part of the goal. They purchased property off of the Kenai Spur Highway, and they've got a great little facility now, and we've got a couple of spaces available. So if folks are interested, just have them give me a holler. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, quality of life is so important to everybody. And I have a tremendous board along with my staff that we review this constantly to make sure that we're heading in the right direction. But we've got 5 major areas that we concentrate on right now. And the first one is technology and communication. The second is workforce and human capital. The third, infrastructure and land use. The fourth, business climate and entrepreneurship. And the fifth being regional partnerships. When somebody comes to us and asks us to do something or they need help, the first thing I do is I look at these 5 and see how I can fit them in there. And if I can't find a way to fit them in there, then what I'll do is I'll pick up the phone and say, and try and put them together with somebody that can help them if it's not within our bailiwick. Next slide. As we're looking at our community, where are we and what we're doing, I want to make sure that y'all know we had a great meeting last week. We not only had all of the city managers from all of the incorporated communities, which is something that we started a couple of years ago, meet at our office, but we also had the mayor of the city of Kachemak because they don't have a city manager. So we were real fortunate. And I have to tell you that one of the things, there was a lot of things that we talked about, but one of the big things that they were concerned about and talked a lot about was revenue streams and potential taxes. The different kinds of potential taxes that are being talked about, whether it be within the assembly, the council, or different community areas. So just know that they are very concerned about that, and they are a partner. They're somebody that will be the front line if somebody decides that, yes, we need to start taxing one thing or another. Next slide. From the borough standpoint, first of all, and Peter and I talked about this here around a month ago, we were informed by the Department of Energy that we are a finalist for a major project outside of Nikiski with Tidal Energy. The Department of Energy will be here the end of November to take a hard look and get a chance to visit with folks. We're also in the process of discussing things with the Department of Transportation. They really like how we handle outreach and the way we're able to reach out to all the different folks, whether it be government, whether it be our community, whether it be our native community. So we're in discussions right now to potentially handle the outreach for the Department of Transportation here on the Kenai Peninsula. And as Cassidy has said several times to me, Tim, the only thing we don't want is we don't want to be the complaint department. So what we're working on right now is a structure that may work that would help everybody. Along with that, we've been involved in a lot of things here lately. Cooper Landing with trying to help get them their snow grooming equipment that they've applied for. You probably saw here recently out of the infrastructure grants, the $2.3 million to rebuild Jackaloff Bay float. We're currently working on a replacement for our friends Raven, who are no longer serving the central part of the peninsula. And also the Denali Commission, when they were able to get their budget approved here recently, that included monies for Homer and for Ninilchik when it came to their harbors. From a state standpoint, hopefully you all had a chance to see last month's Alaska Business Monthly, where KPED was featured with a variety of our different projects that we're working on. Next slide, please. Just want to remind you all that workforce development is really a three-legged stool. We need to work on childcare, housing, and transportation. And if we're not working on all three of them, we can just give up on the workforce piece, because those are all three very, very important parts, and KPED is trying to play a role with that. Mariculture and broadband are also two major things that we are working on. And now it's all you. That's me.
Thank you, Tim. And thank you for having us tonight. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to see you all in this capacity. I've worked with some of you over the years, and it's exciting to be on the peninsula right now and be working with communities, local government, state government, and the people that we serve. As Tim mentioned, we look at quality of living, but we don't just guess on what it is that we're going to focus on. We develop this comprehensive economic development strategy for the peninsula. It's a 5-year plan, and we revise it every year to update what those quality of living standards are that we've identified through data and resource management tools. Within those quality of living pieces is the technology and telecommunications component. And that is our number one focus on this round of the SEDS development. We're identifying that the broadband infrastructure and connectivity is very important in healthcare, education, business, commerce, the way that we communicate with our family members and our friends and neighbors. And it's the way that we live. Broadband infrastructure and technology is essentially like power and electricity and utilities, and we need to treat it as such. So what we've done is we've had the Broadband Regional Task Force that we've been heading up for just about 2 years, and we meet with state and federal leadership and the funding resources in broadband, but then also we meet with community leaders and identify projects and gaps that are in the infrastructure to better facilitate and get the funding that works better and in a more efficient manner for technology. We, as Tim talked about, we do workforce and human capital focuses. We have identified that the three-legged stool is access to transportation, access to affordable housing, and access to childcare that's peninsula-wide. Without those things, people can't enter the workforce and support our economies. And we've identified those as focus areas. We've also have a strong support and advocacy for business climate and entrepreneurship. We offer resiliency toolkits that will help businesses stand up and be resilient in the face of shocks. And we all know what economic shocks can do to our economy. We want to build those up and make sure that we can power through in the next natural disaster or economic disaster. Regional partnerships, we are strong in making sure that their partnerships and relationships and connectivity. We believe that it's not about one side or the other. It's about finding those bridges and finding a way to help everybody that has an interest in our communities and living here. And it's not just about visiting, it's also about living and working and thriving here, and that's what we really want to focus on for the peninsula. We host the 2020, if we can go to the next slide, please, sorry. That's me. I am a strong believer in community and local government, and I believe that that is where change can really happen. And I believe that people in Alaska are incredibly passionate about the communities that they live in, and I'm here to advocate and support for that. I want to listen, and I want to be a change maker for the people that are leading our communities. Next slide. Please mark your calendars for the April 25th, 2024, instead of the historical date of January, which we usually hold our industry outlook forum. We've shifted to the spring to hopefully garner more interest and people be able to come and visit and share the day with us without the challenging winter roads. It will be in Soldotna at the Soldotna Regional Sports Complex, and there'll be more information out on all of our social media accounts. Next slide. These are our social media accounts. And finally, next slide. Thank you so much for your time and your dedication to the communities that you serve, and we're looking forward to working with you. Tim has definitely set a course and a standard that I'm excited to be able to uphold. He's invited me into the wheelhouse, and I hope that I can do as good of a job as he has. So thank you so much.
Thank you both. Questions, comments? Mr. Elam.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out tonight. It's been a pleasure having you for the number of years that you've served, and I've been able to work in and out of you or time here at KPED, and so it's been really good. I've been on the broadband task force as well, and just throughout everything. So anyhow, big shoes, Mr. Tim. I know you got it, but we'll miss you.
Thank you, Bill. Mayor Machiki.
Yeah, I just want to echo those comments. I'll just talk about KPED in general because I was on the board before Tim, and we'll keep Tim around for a long time afterward on other projects. But I think it's one of the best investments we've ever made as a borough. The return is undeniable. It's been remarkably successful, and look forward to the partnership with the new director. And I know Tim will be available for being a mentor to other projects. But thanks for all you do and for the report tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. President. Look forward to working with you, Cassidy, and you've been trained well, and I expect us just to keep moving along and taking advantage of all kinds of opportunities. Tim, I guess if I was going to say one thing about you, it would be when you came on board, you really, really took the entire borough under your wings, and for so long it was really more central, and for those of us that don't live in the central part of the peninsula, it really mattered, and we tend to be a little unsure of people's motives, and so after the first 6 months we think, okay, they were here, we're not going to see them again. And I just can't tell people how much time you spent on this entire borough, being where you were. I don't know how you did so many miles and made it to so many places, but when we talk about Kenai Peninsula, you really did take that to a new level, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelly. Vice President Cox.
Yes. Tim, thanks. I've appreciated being on the board the last several years. It's been a great board to be on, actually. I'm very glad I was selected to be on that board. Cassidy, I'm very ready to see how you make this your own. I think it will be great, and I think we're going to see some great things coming forward as well. So thanks to both of you, and I'm just excited.
Thank you, Vice President Cox. I'll make my comment to say that, Tim, you're one of the most contagious enthusiastic guys I've ever run across, and you've really done a fabulous job in promoting economic development and in promoting people believing in themselves, believing that things can happen, believing that there's a way to make things work, and really a stop to the naysayers. Cassidy, I hope that you can funnel all that in, take it in, and go on to higher and better things. I'm excited. Well done, Tim, and looking forward to the future for Cassidy.
Thank you.
Mr. Tunseth.
Thank you. I'll just be brief. Tim, I've enjoyed working with you over the years. I agree with everything everybody said up here. I think the main takeaway that I've had is that every time I've been around Mr. Dillon or worked with him, he is constantly applauding his staff and constantly deflecting all of the accolades towards them. And, to me, that's really kind of like the definition of a great leader is you really have an ability to bring people with you. And I know I'm going to miss you, but I have all the faith in you to fill the shoes. So it's thank you both for being here tonight. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan. Ms. Eklund.
Thank you, President Johnson. Tim and I go back to 2006 when we both worked at the Alaska Sea Life Center, and I've never known him not to be one of the cheerleaders of the Kenai Peninsula Borough and our communities, and I know he will continue to do that. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Cindy. Mr. Hibbert.
Thank you, President Johnson. Tim, thank you for everything you've done with us. And it's almost been 7 years, since I've been on the Assembly, and to listen to your reports and that, I know you have left us in great hands with your team. You're a heck of a leader, and I appreciate that. And Cassidy, I look forward for this next year of all of us working with you and that. So thanks a lot.
Looks like it's always got to end sometime. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to have the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District Quarterly Report. Clayton Holland, Superintendent. Come on forward. Clayton, welcome as always.
All right, thank you, President Johnson, Assembly members, Mayor Machicki. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'd like to congratulate the new members or returning members, and then, of course, anybody who ran. Obviously, if you get in the arena, it takes a lot of courage, so appreciate everyone who does that. A couple of things. I want to thank Bill Elam. He is stepping away from being the liaison for the school district, and he's done an excellent job and been a stalwart all this time, so very much appreciated, Bill. Ryan, Mr. Tunseth, we look forward to working with you as well, and I know you're old Cardinal, so that's good. No, I shouldn't say that kind of thing, but anyway, I do appreciate you. Presentation tonight, we'll get to in just a moment, is with Career Technical Education, Annalita Karen. She's presented here before, but a number of new members, so she'll provide updates on what we're doing with Career Technical Education, or CTE. And you're from my age or older, we used to call it vocational education, though it's kind of changed a little bit. And then also a little bit on the middle college as well. I'd like to address a couple of other things real quick that I heard tonight. Well, one, Tim Dillon, thank you so much. You've been a great partner to us and a member of our Career Technical Education Advisory Committee and providing useful information and industry updates that keeps us going in the right direction. And Cassidy, we look forward to working with you. Mr. Southwell, Mrs. Southwell, the school board also has developed a resolution, passed a resolution on human and sex trafficking. This is a big issue for us as well, and so appreciate you bringing this forward. I would like to also just talk about, we had a financial audit we just completed. It was presented at the board meeting, but we once again passed with flying colors. I expect we'll be recognized again this year for our transparency with our budget and accuracy in reporting, but good job from our financial team as well. And then just a lot happening this year, great events, but I'll just end with some positives related to athletics. That we had 3 of the 4 divisions in football, state champions from the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District. So Seward, 9-man, we had Kenai Central back where they should be with the Division 2. And then, of course, our Division 3, Division 2, Sohai won as well. So just congratulations to them. We just had 2 state champions in swimming, diving. Gabriella Werner from Sohai took the first in diving and the 3rd highest score ever in the state. And then Ben, I'm not going to get the last name, but
Ambrosiana took a first as well, and then a lot of other athletes that placed. And then we have 3 volleyball teams up at state this weekend coming up here too. So a lot of good things happening in athletics. And then since I last met, girls cross country from Seward won state as well. But just happy how those kids compete, the toughness associated with that, and the good coaching and parent support that comes with all that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn over to Analia Karen. SoHi grad has been doing great work with us with middle college and career technical education. What did I say?
Seward.
Did I say Seward?
You said so high.
Oh my gosh. Seward for official record, right? Yes. How can I do that?
And there is a QR code on the slide deck that if you want to be able to click through that on your own and look at some of the hyperlinks and things, that's available for you as well. You can click to the next 2 slides because that's just my information and contact info as well. So we really wanted to give you a heads up on our career technical education this evening. We just had our advisory committee meeting. We meet twice a year. This year it was October 27th, and then again we'll meet in April. And there is a hyperlink in there with our current committee members. For the advisory committee, it really is the entire community. We have parents, students, economic development folks, business and industry partners that all play a part in advising our CTE committee. And that purpose really is to advise and promote our programs, as well as to look at opportunities in the community so that our students can engage in things that are already happening in the Kenai Peninsula Borough. And then I have a highlight on there just that we are looking for a couple of student reps. So if you know someone that would make a good student rep in CTE, we would love to have those names kind of come forward. And then we're also looking for special populations and some other industry partners. So we're looking this year at healthcare. We're looking at engineering. So we're looking at like Marathon and other petroleum folks that could be involved in that committee and really give us a wider range of input. Wanted to give you a quick overview of Perkins 5. This is the federal guidelines for the Perkins Grant Program. Perkins 5 is supposed to be a supplemental grant for career technical education so that we have a well-rounded education in our schools that promotes that career readiness component. So this is the hands-on skills that students are getting to promote the workforce component. You'll see that there's several cogs to this wheel, and this year is our CLNA, or Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment year. So we have to gather all of our local input so that we can build our plan, and anything that is in that plan can then be reflected in our budgeting process. If it's not identified as a local need, we can't spend money on it. And so that process becomes really important to pull all of those pieces together and have all of our community's input so that we can correctly budget and decide where we're going to spend the funding. There are 5 components to the CLNA, and so there's a link in this one to the state database that shows some of the components of Perkins funding that's reported out across the state. The state website right now is undergoing maintenance, so typically you would be able to click on this and see participation numbers, CTE concentrators, which is students that take 2 or more CTE classes, and then the graduation rates for our programs. It's not running currently, so on the next slide, I pulled some highlights for you that I thought were important to share. The graduation rate for CTE students who take 2 or more career technical education classes in the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District is 96.5%. So that's something I like to shout from the rooftops. Kids who know what career they're going into are successful in the high school environment. They are poised and ready to jump into the workforce and be successful afterwards. Last year, we added 15 additional CTE courses to our Perkins report. So those are classes that are state approved to spend grant funding on. So that was exciting. And then our post-graduation placement, these were students who were CTE concentrators. So they took 2 or more classes and then graduated last year in the school district. 67% of those students went directly into a post-graduation placement. So that could be going into a AvTech or another college program, or going directly into employment with a CTE employer in the state. So that's a pretty good number to be bringing back. Last year's focus areas, we focused on 3 pathways. Some highlights there is our CAD/CAM classes. From 22 to 23 saw a significant increase in the number of students participating in CAD/CAM. We also focused on our workforce development or our apprenticeship program. So we had last year 58 students who completed work-based co-op. And then our construction numbers significantly increased in our construction programs as well. There's some other numbers that I'll skip through, but the one down at the bottom that's highlighted there for you, last year students in KPBSD earned 586 high school credits and 1,695 college credits. So pretty amazing. We've also brought back some of our traditional programs like our college and career fair and our job shadow opportunities. So last year, Kenai Central High School did a job shadow week. Kenai Alternative did a certification week where they had things like OSHA 10 and CPR first aid. Seward did a job career fair, and many other schools hosted other opportunities. There's some pictures there of this year from Seward. They toured the NOAA Ocean Ship Okeanos and got to look at engineering and marine trades opportunities. So high students this year have already been over to KPC to look at the process tech and welding programs. And then we took a group of teachers up to Anchorage to tour the UAA and Matsu technical programs. Last year, again, we focused on health, human services, computer sciences, and construction, and really built out those pathways so that there was robust opportunities there. Those are each linked to the classes that are approved in those pathways. Let's get the next one. And this year, we are focusing on hospitality and business, engineering, and transportation. So we're really trying to build out those pathways that have been identified here locally, things like aviation and maritime, where we have a huge need in the workforce and also interest from our students. There's a list of some of the CTE classes that we're currently working on updating in those areas. And then some additional data on some of the PD that we're doing for our staff. One of the big things that we're running into is recruitment in these areas. It's hard to find people in industry who are really great engineers or really great welders that want to become teachers. So we're looking at opportunities to recruit those folks and get them to teach our students so that we can develop that next generation in these industries. And I'm going to skip that one, but just know that we are really looking at small schools and how we can address classes across the entire district. There's some spring opportunities coming up right now. This week we're doing the Alaska Petroleum Academy. It's being hosted this week. We have CNA, EMT, and ETT. We're partnering with the Explorers program through CES. We're working with the hospital on a couple of things, as well as KPC and AvTech. Okay, and then last on my list, because I saw my time is up, I did want to make a quick shout out to our middle college program as well. The middle college program has grown significantly in the last year. Our enrollment is currently open for spring, so we're collecting applications right now for the spring semester. On the next slide, we currently have 96, it says 92, but 96 students that are enrolled this fall through the middle college. And those students for fall took 596 college credits. So pretty incredible to see students really pushing themselves in that post-secondary realm. Last year we had 82 students and they completed 1,059 credits in the year. So a huge shout out to you guys and a thank you for the Jumpstart program and for supporting the middle college and those opportunities for students to get a head start on college credits. It is seen across the country right now that college is expensive. And so anything that we can do to support our students to be able to afford taking classes and earning training is a big deal. So thank you for that. I think I had like 2 or 3 more slides there, but we can skip and go straight to the last one that is questions from you guys and any other information that you want from me.
Thank you for the presentation. Questions from the assembly? Vice President Cox.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. I was just going to mention that I love the CTEs. I have 2 graduates that have graduated in the last 2 years, and they were able to take at SoHi some engineering courses along the way. And part of what that's done is, they may have not gotten like this big super head start with engineering, but what it gave them was an idea that that is something that they were interested in. So I very much appreciate that, because they did some of the other courses too, and those were the ones that they seemed to find that they liked. So that's what they were pursuing. And then I also wanted to thank you guys for just continuing the middle college. I think it's a great program, and I think it's one that will continue to be successful. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Cox. Mayor Machicki.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to both of you for being here and for your progress on CT programs. I guess my question is about whether or not, when I was in industry, we partnered quite a bit. That seems maybe to have dropped off a bit. Just wondering how those partnerships, are any new ones developing with firms and sectors that will benefit from those that choose to stay in a vocation rather than leaving for the university, or perhaps those that do both and return to the area. Are you seeing interest from those local investors? I'll call them investors because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a renewed interest in that. And as we look at Department of Labor statistics and some of the pieces that are coming out from the state on the workforce gap and the skills gap as well, industry is really starting to feel that crunch, and they're turning and looking to the high school students as an opportunity to build that workforce earlier and develop those skills. And so we are definitely pursuing those opportunities. For example, right now working with CES, we have the KPC instructors that are doing EMT teaching a class at SoHi this semester. So we have students that are immediately getting that certification and able to go right into the workforce in that sector. Other ones that we're looking at right now, I'm meeting with the hospital to look at their volunteer program, and we're also going to talk with IT to look at how we can take our cybersecurity students and our computer programming students and plug them in some of those realms as well. I'm really excited to look at aviation. There's a couple of aviation programs throughout the state to see if we can start building some pilots and getting kids that are able to go that direction, as well as transportation, whether it's working in the automotive industry or in the maritime sector.
Thank you. Ms. Eklund.
Thank you, President Johnson. Hey, so you're very familiar with the Seward High School and the amount of space that's available. And there was mention in a couple of things tonight about the need for expanding childcare. Has your department looked at holding classes in early childhood education and getting some basic certification at the high school level?
Yes, absolutely. So we actually have an exciting program that's through UAF that allows students to earn an occupational endorsement or a certificate in early childhood. And so they can actually earn 16 college credits and get that first certificate while they're still in high school. And so we're working with AHEC, which is the Alaska Health Consortium, to do an intro to health careers. And as part of that health careers, they've pulled in that early childhood piece. And so we're going to be doing a camp in Seward, a camp in Homer, and then one here in the Central Penn also. And students who participate in that program and take that first 3-credit college class can then go and participate in additional college classes. And so we're looking at those opportunities of how we can tie in the college credits and then also use our Ed Rising program, which is our intro to education after school club. It's a statewide organization, and so students can start to learn how to do lesson plans and that early childhood development class. The college also offers lifespan development, which is a psychology 150 class. Nice. And so there's a wonderful pathway where students can build those credentials, and then hopefully we'll be able to keep them here on the peninsula.
Thank you, Annalie.
Thank you. Mr. Elam.
Thank you. Thanks for both of you guys coming out and the presentation here tonight. Really appreciate the program. As I've talked to people throughout the community, it's really nice, given kind of where our community is, a lot of the trades and stuff that we have here. And so to be able to develop our resources, our people locally, to be able to come out and do stuff right out of the gate and to be able to have a career platform, I think is a wonderful thing. So I've really appreciated that. Gonna miss seeing you guys at the school board meetings there, but always feel free to reach out. And I'm sure Mr. Ryan down there is going to do a great job at helping us out with everything. And so, but if you guys ever need anything, I'll look around.
Thank you, and thank you, Bill, for your service there. Mr. Hibbert.
Thank you, President Johnson. And Leah, thank you. Last year you came here and presented, and it excited me. I really liked what you do there, and Superintendent Holland also. Looking at your numbers here of 96.5% of graduates, they graduate if they take your class. I love that. And 67% of them get jobs. I like that a lot. So I talked to Superintendent Holland earlier tonight about this. I had seen a news article that up in Anchorage, that as you come in as a freshman, you get to experience different trades. And then your sophomore through your senior year, you have to take these classes and finish it up. And I was wondering if you had any insight on that, and if that was something that might work here also.
Yeah, I think it's something that we've definitely explored, is looking at that capstone opportunity where students kind of pick a pathway and then progress through. Those CTE concentrators become really important, of having a student take 2 transportation classes or 2 business classes. And so one of the things that we have brought on this year, and we're kind of piloting, and it'll launch next year entirely, is the new Naviance program, which is our college and career planning tool for students. So I'm training all of our counselors on it actually on Thursday. And so they're going to learn how to use the platform, and then students are going to be able to, even at the middle school, 6th grade on up, start to look at different career paths and what those look like, explore different opportunities, and hopefully that will help them build that 6-year plan so that they can then go through and kind of have a more laser focus on what they want to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hibbert. Clayton and Annalee, really great job tag teaming on that report. I think we just need to continue to build enthusiasm about education on the Kenai Peninsula, and I think you helped do that tonight, and so I appreciate that very much. Education is where it's at. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take a 9-minute, now it's gone down to 8-minute break, but that's the way it goes, 8-minute break. Okay, I really wasn't kidding. It's 7:40 and we can't go home until we get done. Okay, the next thing on the agenda are public comments for items not appearing on the agenda. Madam Clerk, has anyone signed up?
Marie McConnell. All right, so thank you, President Johnson. And I came here because I wanted to talk about something that I'm very passionate about. I want to bring awareness to an issue I'm passionate about. So people don't talk about this issue, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. If you knew the statistics, and maybe you do and maybe you don't, 3% of people have manic depressive, which is now called bipolar. So that would be like 3 out of 100 people. And I think the statistics are about the same for schizophrenia. There's 3 out of 100 people that have schizophrenia in our community. Borderline personality disorder would be the same, 3 out of 100. So if you look at that, out of 100 people, we have about 10% that have a severe mental health disorder. These people are walking amongst us. These people, out of no cause of their own, have brain chemistry that malfunctions and is not fair that we think of them any different than if they have diabetes or cancer. We wouldn't get mad if a cancer patient collapsed in a elevator. We wouldn't be mad if somebody with diabetes went low blood sugar and collapsed. We would be there to help them. Unfortunately, when people that have these severe mental illnesses have issues, people tend to run. They're scared. They're thinking of, here's Johnny. Okay, and then we also want to think about, there's also other mental illnesses that aren't so severe, like anxiety, depression, drug addictions, ADHD, fetal alcohol, codependency, low self-esteem. There's a whole range in the DSM-5 of disorders and diseases. And so that would, I don't know what that all adds up to, but I'm just guessing at a minimum, we got 25% of our community. I did hear one lady say we have 60,000 residents now in our peninsula. So let's just say we have somewhere between 6,000 to 15,000 of our residents who are afflicted with something that isn't their fault. And I would like to have better quality of life here for everyone, because everyone is affected by people in our community that are suffering from this. And so I would like to see some type of community training on de-escalation for people that are in crisis so they aren't housed in Wildwood. I think that we need a mental health court here. I think we need a NAMI chapter here. And that was what I had to say. And I also wonder, are we looking at Starlink when we're looking at the broadband issue? Because I just love my Starlink that I got a couple weeks ago. It's working great. It cost me $660 for the hardware and $90 a month, and I gave up on broadband. That's all I had.
Ms. McConnell, thank you. I don't see any questions. I guess I'll make a comment that I don't 100% agree that people look down on folks with mental illness. I know I certainly don't. And I think it's a real issue, and it's a broad spectrum, and I agree with your illustration that mental illness is an illness just like all those other illnesses. And so when a person has a mental illness problem, it shouldn't be an embarrassment. It's something that happens like other diseases. So.
Well, thank you, Mr. Johnson, because I would like to publicly say that in 2007 I was diagnosed with bipolar, and I have not received that type of feeling from other people in our community or my family that I have lost contact with because of that, and also in-laws who also disowned me.
I'm sorry for the tough experiences you've had, Marie. So
thank you.
You have
Thank
my
you.
sympathy, that's for darn sure.
Yeah, you've always been very respectful of me when I've come here and testified in 2015, and I listened to you guys on KDLL, and I came out of Fred Meyer and heard that. So I'm parked in the 1 hour spot, so I'm going to continue to listen on KDLL when I leave here. Thank you.
Well, great. Appreciate it. Mayor Michicki.
I just wanted to make a comment that we've begun meeting as a group with Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority and law enforcement. I agree with you that a lot of folks that have psychological issues end up in the court system, and sometimes are just in need of treatment or a reminder of the treatment they've already had prescribed to them. So we are hoping to put something together where we actually have a intervention team here, so we can keep folks posted on that effort. I think it's really important.
I think that'd be really important, because when I was arrested on Saturday night, I actually told the trooper I wanted to de-escalate. I wanted de-escalation. He said, "We don't do that here." And I told him that I had bipolar, and I also am diagnosed with clinical for anxiety. And they asked me, "What medications are you taking?" And I told them Vraylar, Ambien, Klonopin, and Seroquel. "When did you last take them?" "Last night at 1 a.m. I took Seroquel to sleep, and I took Ambien. Or no, I took a Klonopin because I was anxious. See, I can't remember because I have this anxiety disorder. And I was not treated well. And I am fighting this felony charge that I received because somebody was going to try to burn my house down, and I intercepted them on the way to my house out in Sterling. And I was the one who was wrong, even though I called 911 and said I needed help. This person's on the way to my house, and they're going to burn my house down. So I think we have a huge issue. It's not what you think. From what I've experienced, and I have log notes and I have tons of court stuff that I have saved, because one day I wanted to lobby for mental health disability. We have a lot of physical health disability that I've seen being lobbied down in Juneau, but I am at the point where I think that I'm doing well on medication now for several years, and I think that I would like to be able to stand up, because I'm not employed, but everybody needs a purpose, and I would like to work on helping with this issue.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Vice President Cox.
I was just going to thank you for coming in tonight, and just to let you know, we have been working this year quite a bit, and I've been personally asking lots of people to come in that are within the mental health field to at least come and talk to us and bring some awareness, because I know it's not a very big thing, but I do believe that's where it has to start. Is we need to start having some awareness, bring that forward, and then, like Mr. Machicki was saying, is we start some programs, we start doing those things. That's how we get people. Not just those that are dealing with some of these things, but their family members as well, like you were saying. It's important. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hibbert.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and speaking tonight. This assembly has been asking the Central Peninsula Hospital about bringing some people in for mental health treatments. And they came to us not too long ago asking for some money to rent, to lease a place. And bring in some psychologists and in that. So we are looking at this and hopefully it will get better.
That'd be great because we are definitely short. I had a 7-year boyfriend for 7 years that passed away a year and a half ago due to a heroin overdose, and he was in and out of the mental health, and he just gave up because he didn't feel like the wait at PCHS was going to be 6 months. The month before he died, he was in extreme pain and he was mentally distraught and was having issues with emotional regulation, and he wasn't able to get in. We have a severe shortage. We had a psychiatrist that was over at PCHS that just resigned in the last year, Dr. McGee. I started seeing Dr. McGee in January of 2008 is when I first started receiving services on the peninsula. So I've been a client for a long time, and I have some good experiences and I have some bad experiences, and I can see where we have room to improve around here. And I think the big issue is we don't have enough providers. The other issue is that I believe that psychiatry is, I'm changing the way I'm wording this because I realize this was offensive to say it was still in the dark ages. So I want to say that we could have improvements with mental health treatments and understanding and diagnosis, so that it was more like how we treat cancer or diabetes. Is like the medical profession is so far advanced in cancer and so far advanced in diabetes and all other kind of stuff, but we're not very far advanced in mental health treatment because it's something that you can't see. You don't look at me and see that I have this bipolar diagnosis. You don't look at me and see that I have anxiety, besides maybe my voice is kind of cracking and my face could be red. So how would you know? And how does doctors know? And we can't run me through any kind of scan. You can't put me in a CAT scan. You couldn't put me in an MRI. How do you know? How do you know if I'm okay? How do you know if right now I'm manic? How do you know if I'm depressed? Probably a depressed person would be talking really slow. But I could very well be hypomanic right now talking to you guys, because who in the world gets on the public radio and tells you my health stuff, which should be my HIPAA thing, right? So I just want to be one of the people that comes out of the closet around here and says, hey, I am highly accomplished petroleum engineer by training. I did really well on the slope until I thought the place was going to blow up, and I did everything I could to figure out where it was going to blow up, and I got sent home, and I got put on disability because I tried to keep the place from blowing up, because everybody I worked with on the slope was my brother, my dad, my uncle. It was the family. And I'm very thankful to ConocoPhillips that they didn't accept my resignation when I said I'm out of here because this place is blowing up, because I had a premonition of the body laying in the bed, and the body laying in that bed at Kaparic at KOC, and the bed and the wall blew up. And I don't know what it was, but my job was to keep things from blowing up. So I had the 911 phone call of, this is leaking gas, these lockdown screws are leaking oil, we just had the subsurface safety valve fail, and I had all the testing requirements. And I wrote variances to AOGCC. So I had a high stress level job, and I cracked. So hopefully we'll get more help. So I'm glad you guys are already on top of that. And I'd be happy to be a consultant for any type of questions you guys have.
Marie, thanks for your testimony tonight.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else signed up, Madam Clerk? Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to something that is not on the agenda? Come on forward.
I wasn't going to say anything, but you guys were so kind to the last person. I thought, you know what, this might be a good crowd for this. So my name is Nick Connor. I wanted to bring the Assembly's attention some issues that I have been having with the emergency management in Soldotna. I would like to thank the mayor for listening to my concerns and help to fix some major issues. I have worked with the mayor to get the next 911 Dispatch Advisory Board meeting to be open to the public with an option to attend in person or Zoom. It will be at this location on Thursday. The staff that work at the emergency response building are spreading rumors that I am a threat. I am not a threat. Certain administration staff at the emergency response building are involved with gossip and innuendo to attack my character and reputation. And the reason why I spoke up is because I've seen emails where they've claimed that I'm 1096. 1096 means that I'm a mental case. I'm going to discuss that more at the 911 dispatch board meeting. I'm not really clear about how this government stuff works, but I thought I could address the Borough Assembly, bring it to your attention, that the emergency response building is not open to the public as of me wanting to attend a 911 advisory board meeting that is on the KPB calendar and is being held at that location 9 times this year. The building also houses administrative offices for CES that are not accessible to the public. The website says visitors can look at the emergency plans. It says the public is invited to attend meetings, and it says visitors can go there. During the 2021 COVID pandemic, there was a sign on the building that said it was closed to the public because of COVID. It has been explained to me that it is closed because it houses sensitive equipment and it responds to emergencies, so the public might be in the way in the event of emergency. I was also told that only contractors, borough employees, or people with a background check could come in the building. I have done work with the borough since 2000. I have 23 years of going into buildings that house sensitive equipment and emergency equipment. But this building is now closed to the public. I am unclear why so much time and energy is being spent at the emergency response building to keep me from attending a short 1-hour meeting. I am a large man and I am loud. I have been struggling with hearing loss, but I am not a threat to anyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Connor. So what is your interest in attending a 911 advisory board meeting?
That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. The 911 dispatchers are, for lack of a better term, they're kind of like the special eggs. They are not law enforcement officers. They're not borough employees. They are contracted by the borough to answer the phones for 911. They are called 911 dispatchers, but the LEOs are utilizing them for administration calls. So when someone calls for an admin question, you call the trooper station, or if you call a police station after hours, these 911 dispatchers answer the phone. If you ask them their name, they are extremely hostile and aggressive. On their website, it actually says that we answer 911 calls and other calls. Their mission statement is they're to be respectful and courteous. It says that their only product is service. But it's been my experience that if you call a 911 dispatcher, we could call them right now if you'd like, and ask them their name. And not 911, I'm talking about calling like the trooper admin. They will freak out on you. They will be very upset.
Okay, Mr. Connor, you lost me on why would I want to know a dispatcher's name?
Oh, also very good question. So sometimes when you call into the police, you want to get records. You want to get in touch with an officer, and it's best to get someone's name in the beginning of a conversation, because if the conversation goes sideways and you'd like to make a complaint against them and you try to ask for their name, then they won't give it to you. So it's been my experience working with insurance companies and vendors for years and years. I always say, oh, hello there, can I get your name? just as simple as get your name. I'm not talking for 911 calls. I'm not talking about like someone's responding to an accident or something like that. I'm talking about when you call in to the Soldotna Police Department right now, you don't get an answering machine. You don't get a menu to be transferred to somebody. One of the 911 dispatchers will answer their phone. Non-emergency. And you just say, "Oh, hi there. Can I get your name?" And it's been my experience that that does not go over well. They have been told that they can give their name if they want to. I have been told that even though they are public employees paid by the borough, they do not have to give out their last name for FOIA requests, for complaints. I asked Tammy Goja, who's in charge of it. I did a FOIA request through her. They have no policy and procedures. They have no complaint process, and they will not give out any last names.
I see. Okay. As far as I knew, there are women that worked over there, and it would seem to be an uncomfortable thing for them to give out their name. But I understand, like you say, when you're talking to insurance people and that sort of thing, it's handy to get a name, or a state employee, it's handy to get a name because you need to know who you're talking to. So, okay, I understand. Thank you.
And again, just like I say, it's not. I'm not talking about 911 calls. I'm talking about when you call the troopers and you need to get a hold of somebody. So, yeah.
Vice President Cox.
Yes. Thanks, Nick. And I'm hearing that you have these concerns. I really hope that at this meeting you can get some resolve. So I do hope that you can get something answered, at least on some of it. You may have to come to a point to understand that you may not get answers that you like on all of it, but hopefully that you get some answers. Okay?
Sure. And if I could comment real quick, the problem is I'm going to them with the answers. I'm showing them the policy and procedures and the website, and they're disagreeing with me. So right now I'm the one that has the answers, and they just don't want to follow policy. So
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to something that is not on the agenda? I am going to close this portion of the public hearing and come back to the assembly. Mayor's report. Mayor Machicki.
Thank you, Mr. President. You'll find under agreements and contracts, snow removal and sanding of various borough schools. There's 5 contracts. Authorization to award a contract for Central Peninsula Landfill Cell 3 gas piping, and McGann Drive and Goodwich Street Center Avenue Capital Improvement Project, as well as capital project reports. It's going to give a brief report on where we are with CES Station 1 replacement project, going through design development. Some preliminary utility work has been completed. The replatting, zoning change, and conditional use permit is scheduled to be introduced at Soldotna's Planning and Zoning meeting on December 6th. Likely an invitation to bid for construction in February 24, with a construction completion scheduled for the 3rd quarter of 2025. Could change. That's where we are right now. The chief is nodding, so I must be close. The Soldotna L and Soldotna Preparatory School bond projects. We're still working through the educational spec for the replacement of Soldotna L. The third-party cost estimate was provided to the project team, was much higher than we expected. Some of you have heard. So we are working, the borough and the school district administration is currently evaluating options for reducing cost, hoping to come together on a solution, and once a path forward is identified that addresses the budget issue, we hope to move the project forward, and it would be presented then to the assembly and the school board. So on just the general meetings that kind of have been occurring, the ones that matter, I think I talked about the Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, being here last meeting. That was an interesting meeting. I've been going to places for the recognizing years of service recognition. The 911 dispatchers are borough employees. I went there the other day to present years of service recognitions. Completed Nick Chapman's 6-month evaluation. He's our new flood service area manager on the east side, doing a very good job. I'm very pleased. You just don't know sometimes. I know now. He's doing a very good job. We're very pleased with him. We had our capital priorities discussion follow-up, which is what resulted in the document that you approved tonight. You know, as a borough mayor, you get involved sometimes in things that aren't really a borough mayor's job. And one of them was a complaint about some parking for ATVs out at Nikiski Junior Senior High, and we came to a good solution that's being executed here shortly. I get the concern. We do have rural schools, and those of us that have been around here a long time know that four-wheelers and dirt bikes and snow machines are a realistic form of kids to get back and forth to school. Sometimes it's legal in accordance with state law, sometimes it isn't, but we want them to show up, so finding a place for them to park that reduces liability for the school district is something we're going to have to deal with, and I think that came to a good solution, so I think folks will be happy. Halloween was a blast. How many of you came around? Well, I know one of you did with your adorable kids, Mr. Elam. I didn't see any of the others of you, but it was a lot of fun. We had hundreds of families come through. It was really cute. Some great costumes, and got to scare a few kids with the bear in my office and stuff. It was pretty fun. Anyway, getting families into this building is very important to this administration, and those are the kinds of things that we're going to be promoting. We also finished our KPB working group on the 31st. I'll be sending out this list. The original plans were about 15, but after about 100 applications came in, much to the too hard work of my communications director, Mr. Rizzo, we had about 100 applications. We have 24 on the working group, and it's completely by first geographic location, and then trying to have a diversified interest and skill set. And then we have 16 alternates. And the alternates will be in alphabetical order. They're not going to be representing an area, but if we know if someone can't attend a meeting, we're going to start with the A's and move down the list. Next meeting, we'll start wherever that list ended, and we're going to invite everyone that applied to attend those meetings. The interest is getting more people involved that know borough things that sometimes we don't know. So we'll be getting this list out shortly. On the 1st, we had a maintenance visit for Employee Service Awards. It's always fun to do those things because you hear the stories of how long people have been here and what they love about the borough and what they love a little less about the borough, and it gives us some insight on some things that we can shoot for HR policies as well. On 11/2, I did a interview with Elsenia Cosman from Homer News about the materials site. I haven't seen her article yet, but we had an interesting discussion. She had some ideas about how things went, which is always a fun way to have a conversation. But I think we had a good one, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out. And then while we were in Homer, met with South Peninsula Hospital, Ryan Smith and Angela Hennigan. John Hedges was with me, had a good discussion. I have a sheet about the status of various projects, and I think we're really kind of coming together on a plan going forward in a way we can strongly support the direction they're taking. After that, we met with Mark Halpin, who owns a lot of the properties around the hospital, and I think we had a great discussion about what forward progress can look like on securing a campus for SPH, which is a key issue. Exorbitant lease rates. We've determined the value of the property directly associated to what we're paying on lease rates, which is a great way to negotiate a purchase. But I think we had some really positive discussions. I met that day as well with DCC ED Commissioner Julie Sandy on the SetNet economic disaster, which is the next step. So our resolution went to the commissioner. The commissioner has to recommend moving forward. Great discussion. followed up on Friday with a letter to her, which is a requirement that triggers it. Nice to learn the details of how that works. So we're hoping to hear something good about some support for our setnetters, even our even our assembly president. We also met that day with Homer High School. Again, one of those unofficial duties, but so we own the buildings, they run the programs. Sometimes the programs run into issues with the buildings. This is a theater thing, and we think we can help solve the theater thing. So John was with me, and we're talking about some options to help us remember that we serve all of the kids in the community. In most cases, they're the same kids, trying to get them all into our buildings as much as possible for helping them to become the best people they can be when they graduate. Other than that, Saturday night was our Boys and Girls Club annual gala. Mr. Tunseth is also on that board. We've been on for a long time. They gave me a 30-year thing that I didn't expect. 30 years. 30 years. But we live in an amazing place. We do. That place was sold out, packed, generous people that support the Boys and Girls Club, all of our locations all over the Kenai, and pretty exciting result. We'll get final numbers this week, but from the looks of things from the stage, I think it's going to be good. And I want to introduce our new grant administrator, Elizabeth Hardy. Her first day was Monday. She's hiding back there. You can wave. We're thrilled to have Elizabeth here. That was a tough position to fill. I think she's the perfect person for the job. So Brenda's going to be working with her for a while, getting her up to speed. She's got a long history of working grants, and I expect some great things. And my primary goal is not leaving nearly as much on the table as we did last year, and making sure that no one falls behind in their grant requirements. So other than that, I did receive the letter from the commissioner on the brine issue. I need to get it out and get it posted. I think this demonstrates a pretty significant level of responsiveness from the commissioner. 40% reduction in brine solution this year. Some alternate application demonstrations on various rows of just sand and salt. Increasing sand usage. They purchased an additional 3,000 cubic yards over last year. They're enhancing training efforts. They're updating their handbooks, and they're doing a literature review and research to look at if there are better practices that may deliver a similar or better level of service on our highway surfaces. So good things. We're real grateful to the DOT for their attention on. DOT commissioners just don't come to meetings with 200 people at them and face communities that are upset about a particular thing. It was a great meeting, and my hat is off to the community for how respectful they were in engaging with something they're quite passionate about. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor Machicki. Are there any questions for the mayor? I don't see any, so I'll just want to thank you on behalf of setnetters for going to bat for them in the economic disaster. Appreciate it a lot.
You're welcome, Mr. President. They're not drifters, but we love them anyway.
Thank you. And so, on we go to the next issue, which is Resolution 2023-75, amending the Assembly invocation. And I pulled that off the consent agenda simply because people asked. I think it's a controversial issue that no matter what the Assembly does, it'll make some people unhappy and some people happy. And so for that reason, I thought it would be great if the Assembly just treated it as a regular item and that we had a standard discussion on it. And with that in mind, this was in Chairman Tupper's Policies and Procedures Committee. And so Mr. Tupper, if you would, even though you already did before, give a committee report and make a motion to enact.
I move to enact a resolution 2023-075, amending the Assembly invocation policy to provide that invocations will be given by chaplains. And as I mentioned earlier in the committee report, this was something that we talked about in committee as looking at a way of making sure that the invocation stayed neutral, because in its current state, where anybody can kind of sign up to give an invocation, there's always the concern that anybody who signs up might have some other agenda or some other thing that they want to push forward that's not necessarily serving the purpose of the invocation.
Thank you very much for that. And if the sponsors could speak to their. Oh, no, I don't have to go to public. We already did a public hearing. It was on the agenda. I'm not going to open it up for another public hearing. We did that already. And so I'm going to go just to the assembly. I just want to have the public hear what the sponsors have to say, and if for questions.
Just a point of order, if there is somebody who hasn't spoken, could they get the chance then to speak? Because if we're going to speak about it now, I think it would be very fair to let those people speak as well.
Well, I don't think so, but I guess I'm always going to submit to the body. If you want to open it up for another public hearing for just the people who haven't spoken previously, I can do that.
I think it's fair to do that if they haven't had a chance to speak yet.
Okay, so be it. Madam Clerk, is there anybody who hasn't spoken signed up? It couldn't be. Anybody that wants to speak to this that didn't speak earlier during the consent agenda, you're welcome to speak now. Mr. Hamilton.
Good evening, friends. It's good to be back with you. If you don't know me, my name is Reverend Dr. Keith Hamilton, and I'm speaking this evening in support of the ordinance as it was presented earlier tonight. Apologize I wasn't here earlier. 2001, my family moved here from Colorado to start an institution that you're familiar with, and two of the local organizations that I immediately got involved with was Central Emergency Services as a volunteer firefighter, coming from 3 other states. Serving, I wanted to jump right in the community and get to know people here and serve the community. Within a year or so, I was promoted to an officership, and I went to our chief and I said, Chief, one thing we had in Colorado that was extremely helpful to our community and to our firefighters was having a chaplain. And he had heard of them before, but had never been in a department that had them. And so it took a little bit of training on my part to bring him up to speed. We went through the appropriate channels, and the chaplain corps was born out of those early discussions. And so almost for 21 to 22 years now, there have been consistent chaplains at Central Emergency Services. Other departments have had folks come and go, but they've stayed consistent. In fact, we've had 4 of them since the beginning. I guess I was the first chaplain, but then others have come and have really served well. The second group that I got a part of was the ministerium in our community, Kenai Peninsula, Central Kenai Peninsula Ministerium. And right away, Jim Pearson, pastor of the Lutheran Church up in Sterling, walks up to me in my first or second meeting over at Sal's and says, hey, you want to sign up? And I said, sign up for what? He said, to be an invocation at the Borough Assembly meeting. I said, sure, sign me up. And for the next, I'm going to say 10 years, Pastor Jim would get that form out every January, and we'd all sign up, denominational faiths all over the place. It was a joy to do that. When he retired, I took that over. And I began to get people to sign up from the ministerium group, and we filled your whole year with people from Homer, Seward, other places, but mainly here from the Central Kenai Peninsula. It's been a joy to see the invocation continue. As you know, in both state and federal assemblies, they get together when they meet, and there is a time for an invocation. I'm only going to speak about CES because I can't speak for other departments, but here at CES, we have leaders, including our chief staff, that are very committed to the chaplain corps. These are people who are trained in theology. Each of our chaplains over the year have pastored local churches here in the community. They don't come from any one denomination. They're trained in critical incident stress debriefing. They enter homes and families' worst possible times. and they step in and become a breath of fresh air for people, whether they have a faith experience or not. They support the needs of our firefighters, people in the community by showing up for big events and doing invocations and praying. And then you have seen them probably here at your assembly as well, joining in with others as folks who would bring an invocation. I guess.
That was the bell, but I see Mr. Hibbert has his hand up.
Keith, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
I do, sir, if I may have another minute or two. An invocation is really an opportunity for a group assembled to have someone come in to pray for them, to bring a word that may encourage you, bring wisdom to the group as you meet together. Hundreds and hundreds of people have come over all the years of the assembly prayers to make sure that you know that you have a community that's behind you and many that are praying for you. I know when a difficult decision is to be made, I believe our assembly wants today to have people pray specifically for them and for our Kenai Peninsula Borough. I know there's some tough decisions, and sometimes we have to ask for something beyond us, and it comes from folks that do the invocations. However, in the past years, we have seen with the change to anyone being able to come and speak, unfortunately, that has become sometimes not the purpose and intention of what an invocation is. I'm a favor of this ordinance because it provides consistent, professional, well-trained, and passionate volunteers who are today in our community who are willing to serve in this opportunity. In fact, I'll tell you tonight, both of our current CES volunteer chaplains are here tonight because they wish to invest in you, our Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly, as I do as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Elam, you have a question?
Thank you. More of a statement. I just really appreciate you coming out tonight and just all the years of service you've provided our community. Everything from the chaplain services to the current stuff you're doing. So thank you for coming out.
Thank you, Assemblymember.
Don't see any other questions. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Is there anyone else who has not spoken that would like to speak on the subject of invocation? Okay, I'll close that portion of the public hearing and bring it back. We were at the point where the sponsors were going to speak to it, to their resolution. Mayor Machiki has his hand.
Yeah, I'll speak to it for a second. And no matter what people think this is about, I'll tell you what it's about for me. I'll talk a little bit about the legal basis and the research we've done, but the bottom line is the invocation is about clearing your mind for the business ahead. The business for 60,000 people out there. It's not about the egos sitting here. We all have one. It's about putting all that aside and focusing on what's best for all of them. They've chosen us to represent them. I don't support a moment of silence because I've seen that practice, and what a moment of silence generally is people scrambling through their papers wondering what they're going to say next when the meeting opens. So I think it's an opportunity for a standardized invocation, which, as we have in the resolution, is asking for help or support, in this case for the Assembly and the Borough. It is a prayer, it is an invocation for us to focus. So you can decide that someone's on one side or another, but the bottom line is we've seen more and more, what's the word, proselytizing. We've seen more and more lectures, more and more sort of politically motivated speeches that seldom ask for any help or support for the Assembly. This is a standardized way for a volunteer who is trained in exactly what an invocation represents to deliver a 2-minute or under opening to our meetings, an opportunity for us to focus. It's not about anything. It's not about anything else for me. If there's someone else that has another agenda for this change, that's their business. It's not where I am. I don't care what religion you are. It doesn't matter. That's not what this is about. And when we look at the tradition and look at some of the precedent which we have listed in the invocation, there's just a couple things to note. The United States Supreme Court has noted that in the 1850s, the judiciary committees in both the House and Senate reevaluated the practice of official chaplaincies and concluded that the office posed no threat of an establishment because no faith was excluded by law nor any favored. In this case, no faith is excluded by this resolution, nor is any faith favored. The court has held that all sectarian invocations are constitutional so long as a policy of non-discrimination is maintained. The court stated that it is not necessary to define the precise boundary of the Establishment Clause where history shows that specific practice is permitted. However, the court did provide some guidance. In this case, it's a chaplain, but their guidance was a single clergyman may give every invocation for a body so long as the selection and reappointment of that clergyman does not stem from impermissible motive and no preference is shown toward a particular religion. The invocation opportunity may not be exploited to proselytize or advance any one or to disparage any other faith or belief. The town is not required to reach beyond its borders for non-Christian prayer givers to achieve religious balancing, and the public may not be directed to participate in the invocation. This is a practice that's maintained in the U.S. Congress, state legislatures, and at the local level, and it fits squarely with the seminal Supreme Court case known as Marsh versus Chambers, which challenged the opening of each legislative day with a chaplain paid by the state violated the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. After the case, the Nebraska legislature changed policy to a volunteer chaplain, which is exactly what this resolution does. And I just want to remind folks that one or more bodies of 46 states and Puerto Rico have invocations delivered by a chaplain, and using a chaplain to offer the invocation during the beginning of a legislative session was upheld by the Supreme Court in the Marsh versus Chambers case. We have individuals that are professionally trained to serve those of all religions, or no religion at all. And that's what we're attempting to do here. It's a standardization to move away from the politicalization, I think that's a word, of something that should be a simple focus session at the beginning of our meetings.
Thank you, Mayor. Vice President Cox.
Thank you. I will just add, I did go over some of this earlier today, but I will definitely add that, you know, part of why I signed on for this is because we've had a lot of invocations that have been speeches, sermons, singing, hymns, and actually they're all things that I don't have a problem with. They just are not appropriate for our meetings. And so part of why I wanted to be on this is because of that, is to say, okay, we need to have a little bit more structure to this. The invocation is for us, and I believe it's even written into our rules, is that the invocation is for us. It's for us to have a time to then prepare ourselves for the decisions that we have to make during the day and during this evening. And so that's what I look at it for. And I truly do not believe a majority of our invocations over the last several years have been for that. I believe they've been for political purposes. I believe they've been for religious purposes. And so I very strongly think that if we can go to something like this, that it will help eliminate that. The other thing I wanted to remind folks of is it is in our whereases on the second page, 1, 2, 3, 4 whereases up, that nothing in the selection of a chaplain will limit the chaplain to any religious belief or affiliation. It also will not be decided by us on who those chaplains are. We will not have the say in who those chaplains are, and that is also another step in there to eliminate us having any kind of limiting power over that. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Cox. Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, President Johnson. I am sponsoring this. It's been years that we've been addressing the invocation issue. throughout the years that we have had the attempt to accommodate more people, we've actually divided the population. And compromise became a bad word in our society a few years ago, and I'm not quite certain why that's happened, but I'm a big believer in compromise. I think that this is an option that has the majority of the support of the Assembly. I also like that it creates less work for our clerk's office. We don't need to add more to their plate. So this is an appropriate opportunity. The majority of this Assembly does want an invocation, and I like that it is non-denominational, and it's not political, and it'll be short and sweet, and it's a good compromise. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Ms. Eklund.
Thank you, President Johnson. You know, at first I was like, well, let's just not have one. But what I see, having a set kind of process that's the same, similar each meeting, that is going to harmonize all sides of this issue, not divide, but be inclusive of everybody. When I may not stand, but I am involved in the invocation. The ones that always help me are when somebody says in their invocation, please help them make good decisions in their decisions tonight and give them a clear mind. Those ring in my head and make me then do my own invocation to myself to make sure that's where I'm at that night. So I'm in favor of harmony and balance, and I'll be in support of this resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Eklund. Mr. Tupper.
So I will say when I first saw this on the agenda, I had a similar thought as Ms. Eklund of like, well, if we're at this point, why don't we just get rid of it altogether, or a moment of silence or whatnot? And I still, I think personally would maybe favor that, but I can accept the reasoning behind this. And the only piece of it that gives me a little bit of pause is that I don't know what the hiring process for chaplains is, or I guess they're volunteers. So I just don't know if there's any case where you could say, oh, well, the chaplaincy isn't open to X, Y, or Z. So that would be my only concern. But on the other side of that, I was in the Army. We did have a chaplain. I really enjoyed them, and I appreciated the fact that they were trained to be there for all service members, regardless of their participation in any particular religion or none at all. So this one is a little tough for me, but I can get behind it for those reasons, for the reasons of it becoming something that's more structured and more focused and to the point, and being delivered by somebody who has appropriate training for those things.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Tupper. At this point, I'm going to pass the gavel.
Accepting the gavel.
Thank you, Vice President Cox. What I can contribute is the history of the Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly and the invocation. And so I'm going to read this as from notes that I wrote quite a while ago, and I'm going to read a little bit slow because there's parts that I purposely want to omit reading. And those parts are the ones that tell what churches the folks that gave the invocation went to. We just happen to know these things, and so that's apparently not appropriate to read. At its first meeting, January 1, 1964, in the Soldotna Elks Hall, Assemblyman Robert Williams of Anchor Point offered a prayer. From the Assembly's second meeting, January 18, 1964, in the Kenai School, through its 54th meeting, October 24, 1967, in the Soldotna Community Hall, no invocation was given. The first of a series of invocations was given on November 7, 1967 in the Soldotna Community Hall by Assemblyman Harold Jackson. That practice continued, interrupted only thrice, one of which times the invocation was forgotten. These are words from the minutes of the assembly meetings, by the way. And twice, Borough Chairman George Navarre provided the service. June 18, 1968, Assembly met at the Soldotna City Council chambers, and Harold Jackson offered one of 23 invocations he gave that I know about. The next meeting, July 2, 1968, is unique. It was held in Seward City Council chambers. 4.5 years after his first meeting, a pastor, Reverend Bowers, gave an opening prayer. That watershed moment was dissipated in the following meeting, July 16, 1968, in Soldotna, when no invocation was offered. The practice of alternating between Assemblyman Jackson and Borough Chairman Navarre continued over the next dozen meetings, with each giving 6 prayers. New history was made on January 28, 1969 at the Kenai Courthouse. This was a social assembly meeting to discuss formation of a hospital service area. Fritz Hall became the 3rd assemblyman to give an invocation. Skipping ahead to the next noteworthy occurrence, from July 1, 1969, a meeting at Thompson's Log in Soldotna. For 8 meetings in a row, the minutes say opening prayer was forgotten. That was fixed in November 18, 1969, meeting at the Anchor Point Multi-Purpose Room, where Reverend Dan Bennett became the 2nd pastor to give an invocation. January 6, 1970, meeting at Thompson's Log Gift Shop in Soldotna. For the entire 25 assembly meetings in 1970, no invocation is mentioned in the minutes. On January 5, 1971, the first assembly meeting was held in what became the George Navarre Borough Building, the Betty Glick Assembly Chambers where we are today, and the practice of not having an invocation continued. But another watershed moment occurred at the January 19, 1971 meeting. It was the 2nd meeting in the Borough Building, here where we are today, and it was the first meeting when the Pledge of Allegiance is mentioned in the minutes. I think that the fact that that was the first time the Pledge of Allegiance was mentioned doesn't mean that the Pledge of Allegiance wasn't given before. It just wasn't mentioned in the minutes. But I do think that the records on the invocation are probably quite clear that all those meetings that I'm talking about, that no invocation was given, probably no invocation was given. Beginning January 16, 1973, Assembly minutes refer to a pledge and opening ceremony. This is probably the point of entrance for our modern pledge and invocation system. So basically, for roughly the first 10 years, the Borough Assembly did not have a set ordinance policy, and when they did give an ordinance, an invocation, it was a hit or miss occasion. So I just think that that is important history. Doesn't mean that invocations are good or bad or anything like that. I'm actually very much like Mr. Tupper. I could forego having an invocation. On the other hand, it doesn't offend me at all. And so, because there are many people in our community that feel very strongly for an invocation, I'm certainly willing to have one. For me, one of the biggest issues of why I'm going to vote in favor of the resolution tonight is because in the past, the invocation system is one where it's first come, first served, and request for somebody to give an invocation goes into the clerk's office. It's time stamped to make sure that everybody is kept in order, and then there's a responsibility on the clerks to get back a hold of the people, synchronize, set up an agenda, let people know when they are supposed to come, and then remind them when they're supposed to come. And then about 3 or 4 or 5 times a year, even with that reminder, they don't show up to give the invocation, and we scramble to either find an assemblyman to give the invocation. So I think this is going to be a much more streamlined system than the past. And so for that reason, I'm voting in favor of it.
Handing back the gavel.
Thank you, Vice President Cox. Any further discussion? Vice President Cox.
I will dare to ask for unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent is requested. Is there any opposition? Hearing and seeing no opposition, Resolution 2023-75 passes. And that is going to bring us to, we're probably down to public comments on items that don't appear on the agenda. Just public comments. Yep. Public comments and presentations. This is your opportunity to speak about anything you want to for 3 minutes. Is there anyone signed up, Madam Clerk? Is there anyone who would like to speak? Come on forward.
Adam Bertoldo, Nikiski. I just will say I appreciate you being responsive and pulling that off of the consent agenda and having a discussion about that. As I said before, I see some strong points on both sides, and I appreciate the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Anyone else? I will close this portion of the public hearing and bring it back to the Assembly for closing comments. Bill.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. I appreciate all the thought and consideration that went into the previous resolution there. And I'm very supportive of maintaining an invocation, and I really appreciate everything that everybody has done over the years, and just am happy to see that we're going to be going forward with something that will hopefully work well with our community. Mr. Mayor, that was a great party you threw the other day. My boys came out; they had a great time, and it was a lot of fun. And it looked like a competition between the two sides of the building, if I'm kind of completely honest up there. But it was a lot of fun, and a lot of candy was handed out, and so it was good. Thank you. Everybody have a great night.
Thanks, Bill. Mr. Rubens.
Nikiski lost a member of their emergency response group. He was retired at the time, and I'm just going to read directly from what Chief Burnett said to me. He said, "Peter, I think it would be nice if you said something. Barry Wheeler worked at the Nikiski Fire Department with his volunteer time for 29 years and retired in 2018. It was an honor for all of us to work here with him, and he was a great asset to this community. Barry was diagnosed with a brain tumor in July of this year. He underwent treatment and ultimately passed away October 30th. His family is planning a service in Nikiski. He was also a neighbor and a friend of mine. Thank you."
Thank you, Peter. Mr. Hibbert.
Not much tonight. I did hear Mayor Machicki say that Bill was adorable at the Halloween thing. Or maybe that was his kids. I don't know. That was the kids. Okay, good. Okay. I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and what a great meeting we had. So thanks. Have a great night.
Thank you, Brent. Mr. Tunson.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'll be brief as well tonight. I appreciate the history you provided there. That was actually very interesting. Hearing some of the buildings where the meetings were held, the log cabins and such, it was pretty entertaining. Certainly just want to thank everyone in the community for the outpouring of support for our Boys and Girls Club auction that we had this weekend in Kenai. It was a really fantastic event. I think everybody had a great time, and just also want to recognize all of the volunteers that put in so much work, just making that event possible, and all the decorations and just everything that goes into supporting the Boys and Girls Club. I really appreciate, and I think that it's really part of as we heard tonight, that sort of three-legged stool where we need all of these things in our community in order to have a healthy workforce, and certainly having reliable and consistent childcare is one of those. And so not just the Boys and Girls Club, but any group that's, endeavoring in that issue, I really appreciate. And so I did want to recognize everybody that was there and helped out with that event. And that's all. I just want to thank all my other assembly members. Great comments tonight. I probably would have said more on a few things, but in an effort to not sort of beat the dead horse, a lot of it was already said. So smart group I'm a part of. I'm proud to be a part of it. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. Mrs. Cooper.
Thank you, President Johnson. Great meeting. We do have a Small Business Saturday coming up, but I'd also like to remind everyone that this Saturday is Veterans Day, and I'm very grateful for all of our veterans, and there are lots of businesses giving thank yous to them. So please reach out to your veterans and thank them for the service and the work they do for our country, and pay it forward, or if you have a business, offer something to those vets. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Kelly, and I want to mention that it's really great to have you back on the assembly, by the way. Enjoyed serving with you before. Mayor Michicki.
Yes, two comments. I always appreciate your, not only here, but your posts online about local history. You're holding up really well for a guy that seems to have been around as long as you have. And I did make the comment about the cuteness of Bill's kids. What I didn't do was finish that sentence, that I believe they're genetically heavily weighted toward Bill's wife.
Thank you, Mayor. And that brings us to Mr. Tupper.
Thank you, President Johnson. Well, last meeting, I had encouraged people who were interested to attend a meeting to wrap up the community health needs assessment that MAP of the Southern Kenai Peninsula was holding. And I went to that meeting, and they are now moving into the community health improvement plan part of that. And they've formed a couple of, or they're working on forming a couple of committees to work towards the areas that they identified, which were housing and making sure that people know what resources are out there. So if anybody is interested in participating in either of those committees, you can reach out to MAP of SKP at mappofskp@gmail.com. And that's it.
Thank you, Michael. Ms. Eklund.
Thank you, President Johnson. And I just want to thank everyone that comes and gives input to the assembly. It helps me, and I'm sure it helps the other assembly members. So keep it up. On the way over today, there was sand on the road. I was very thankful that there was sand on the road. It was slick. And I want to again mention Tim Dillon and KPED and what they do for our borough, and I think that Cassidy will do really well. And anybody that's considering either the small business presentation that we had tonight was very informative. Look that up online, and the KPED information, both of them will be really helpful in helping you and building our economy. And happy Thanksgiving. We won't see you till December. Bye.
Thank you, Cindy. Vice President Cox.
Yes, I was gonna let everybody know, if you don't think winter's here, we are there, because we have hockey and wrestling this weekend. They're both out of town. Volleyball has their state tournament at the Alaska Airlines Center in Anchorage. And our ski team, since my daughter's on there, they have been practicing, mostly running, things like that. But the other day, they did get to go on grass that had a little bit of dusting of snow on it with what we consider their rock skis, the crummiest ones you can find, so you don't ruin them all. And so they are getting to get out there. Hopefully, on that note, they'll get a little bit more snow and be able to start skiing for real. So anyways, everybody have a great Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Tyson. I just wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving as well. I appreciate the members of the staff that participate in these late evening meetings, and the members of the public that have come and spoken, and those online, and Riley and Ashlyn from the local press. Appreciate you being here. Sorry that I keep you up late at night. And with that, happy Thanksgiving. Our next meeting is in December December 12. Be here or be square. We're what do you call it when you wrap up? Adjourned.